Jack here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons. In this quick guitar tricks we're looking at volume pot swells, the basic method as well as using 5 licks to combine other techniques or ideas you can use in conjunction with the aforementioned knob fiddling. So make sure you stick around until the end to master all of those. Some bonus tips right off the bat here: a volume pedal can make getting these sounds much easier, just in case you really take to this aesthetic and want to embrace this sound in your playing. As you may have deduced from the intro there, the delay and reverb really go hand in hand with volume swells. Okay, so by the end of this you should have these 5 new licks, a solid framework for how to perform a volume swell, as well as some ideas that can make this trick a bit less novelty and a bit more of a compositional or soloing tool. As usual, timestamps for each section are in the video's description and that pinned comment below, and if you appreciate these tutorials complete with tabs and timestamps, let me know by clicking like and leaving a comment. Any sort of interaction really is a huge boost to the channel. Okay, so the mechanics are pretty simple in theory. You roll the volume to 0, hit a note before the beat, and then roll the volume up. I'm just going with the 12th fret on the G string here to start off with. And you do want to hit the note before the beat. If you play on the beat then roll the volume up, you'll be out of time. So you want to play the note early and roll in when you want the sound to happen. How early you play is up to you. Too early, and the sound will fade away more quickly. I didn't even get any there. Too late, and you have some pretty frantic hand movements going on. So I tend to find using my fingers over my right hand rather than the pick feels a bit more intuitive, a bit like if I'm doing Jeff Beck stuff like in that card up there. And I reckon that's a great way to at least initially get a feel for this. Now some pots will be pretty smooth and increase quite evenly in volume, others will increase quite drastically between maybe even 1 and 3. And on the other hand, others will only start to shift up a gear later on, maybe between kind of 4 and 7. So with that in mind, play a note, roll your volume in, and get a feel for just how the pot reacts. Make a note of when the signal jumps the most in volume, or if there's a few points where they are. You don't have to write them down, but you can if you want to. And if your pot doesn't have numbers, you'll just have to go by kind of intuition. If there's a screw or a grub screw or any sort of marker, you can sometimes use that as a rough indication. But I mean, this is where you want to end up anyway. You want it to be intuitive, you don't want to have to be staring at the pot. Early John Roth makes really good use of pot control, so if you're totally new to this concept, there's a tutorial with a little eye up there that's very much worthwhile checking out. On a side note, lots of gain or compression tends to negatively impact this trick a little bit because you want the dynamics to be here, so you don't want to squash the sound out too much. For me, I just rest my little finger sort of wrapped around the pot and just lifting up my arm to roll on the volume. Having a fairly stumpy little pinky, I can maybe roll the volume to somewhere between 7 and 9 depending on how far around the pot my finger's gone. All the way around like here, no problem. But if it's the part of the way around, which is more than likely, not as far before it rolls off. So a lot of the time my third finger will come in and finish off the roll, or at least provide a point of contact so it's easier to feel my way back there without having to stare down at the guitar body too much. Sometimes my second finger or first finger or thumb will even join in depending on my kind of hand's position. Oh, and if you get sort of crackling sound when you roll your volume in, it probably needs a bit of a clean, so compressed air or WD-40 can usually sort this out in a matter of seconds. Cool, so if you need to pause and spend a little bit of time on this basic technique, the rolling down to 0, playing it, rolling in, and getting a feel for where the volume kind of spikes, where it kind of peaks, just feel free to pause and do that, and if not, let's power on. Okay, so what you might also notice is when going across the different strings, you might find, like I do in particular, my G string, I need to wait a little bit longer before I roll that in. The E and the B I kind of want to start to roll the pattern straight away. And I'm assuming this is because these strings are thicker as we go towards the bottom and resonate more, so they kind of sustain for longer and have a larger output, more of a side note than anything else there. But for this lick, you might find that you don't even need to go from 0 to 10. Obviously this depends on your pot like we just discussed, but 0 to 6 or 7 or 8 should probably be fine. And in fact, if you even go from maybe 3 to 6, it might be sufficient depending on your pot. So if we give that a quick go, for me that would be something like... So I'm still getting that kind of dip in volume, and kind of increase in it. It's not quite as dramatic, but it's just a different aesthetic that you can choose to use. So I'm probably going from 0 to maybe 6 or 7 just as a reference point. I've gone for my net pickup here for that kind of smoother, creamy tone. It's up to you whatever tone you prefer, but this one's definitely worth trying out. But yeah, pot at 0, hit the note, roll up, let it kind of peak, roll back down, repeat for the next note, and so on. So for the music theory here, we're outlining a G major 7. We've got the root, the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 5th, 3rd, root, major 7. So ending on this note is why it's got a kind of such a melancholic vibe for a major 7 arpeggio. Oh, and before I get it, if you're watching and haven't yet subscribed, make sure to give that a click and enable all notifications to get more content like this in your feed. Next up, as you probably noticed, we're using chords. Well, you notice the sound I've dialed in, I can keep it pretty clean and quite sparkly. Or almost like a kind of pad or keyboard synth tone if I really roll the volume in more. For more gain and a kind of more bombastic, overbearing sound. So try strumming near the neck. And closer to the bridge. This will have a pretty big effect on timbre, the kind of overall sound of the chord, because we don't get that initial clarity from the pick attack that you'll tend to find that these chords will be a bit bassier, muddier. So strumming a bit closer to the bridge can really help clean things out here, particularly if you've got more gain going on. In terms of the music theory, this is essentially a C Lydian going from a C major 7 add 9. For more nice chords, check out the tutorial card up there. This voicing has the root, 3rd, major 7, 9. So we have a C, E, B, and then a D. Going to what was probably best described as a D dominant 7 with the flat 7 on the bass, the C, F sharp, A, and D. So flat 7, 3rd, 5th, root. Lick 3 uses pre-bends. If you really spend some time on this, you can make it sound like a reverse solo, which can be a pretty cool thing to pull off in a live setting. A nice amount of delay will help fill in the sonic gaps here. So basically we're pre-bending by a tone, play the note ahead of the beat, then roll in the volume to the desired point. Maybe around 8 for me, or 10 if I've kind of left it a bit too late and I really wanted to sustain a bit more. What we then have to do is kind of simultaneously roll back the volume while releasing the bend. So you got your pre-bend, you're hitting it and rolling the volume in. You want to probably start to release it to pitch a little bit and then roll off the volume just as you return to pitch. So you get that kind of fading out sound. That if we don't roll the volume off, we hear it return to pitch. We don't really want that, we want it to kind of disappear just as you get there. So we have the same idea on the 10th fret, we're pre-bending it a tone, hitting it and rolling the volume up, rolling it back down while releasing the bend at the same time. Very similar on the 7th fret, except what we do here is pre-bend by a semitone, so you might need to adjust the speed which you roll off here to compensate for the slightly smaller bend. But again, pre-bend, hit the note, roll in, and both kind of off together. For the last one, what I'm doing is pre-bending this 4th fret, which is technically an out note, up by a semitone. So it's in the correct pitch. Again, playing it and rolling the volume in. This time sustaining the bend and adding some vibrato. So here what you can really do is bring it in and then roll up all the way. So I could roll to maybe 6 or something. So pre-bend, roll in, and then pull it up at the end just to kind of help it sustain a little bit longer. So the benefit of doing this is that we can go both above and below the target pitch we're doing, a little bit like a Chris Poland style. It's a lesson of 4 of his signature guitar licks up there. But musically, I'm thinking about this over an E minor chord really. So we'd have the root going down to the flat 7, where it kind of, the volume cuts off so you don't particularly hear that. We have the 5th going down to the 4th, so that would be your... And again, you don't really hear that 4th because again, I'm cutting the volume out. Same idea with the flat 3rd going down to the 2nd, where the 2nd kind of doesn't exist because the volume's gone. And then we have the major 7th, which we could think of as coming from the harmonic minor, being pre-bent to the root. So when you think about it, essentially we've got an arpeggio going from the root to the 5th, to the flat 3rd, back to the root. But in what I think is a really musical, or at least lyrical way to play it. Lick 4, and here we're making good use of natural harmonics, eliminating the harsh pick attack you usually get from these. It really helps bring out the more kind of ambient, spacey, mellow side of the harmonic. To learn how to catch one of these and put vibrato on it, check out the lesson card with the little eye up there. So we've got the 5th fret on the G, which is pretty much directly above the fret wire. That one's fairly easy to get. In bar 12, you probably want to go to the 4th fret, and then move a few millimeters towards the headstock. So just play the note, move your finger down this way until it's a bit more prominent. So for me it's there, as I say, just a few millimeters towards the headstock. Bar 13, we've got the 5th fret on the D, so this is the same idea as before. You want to be on the D string and pretty much directly above the fret wire. Again, if it's not sounding out that well, move either side of it a few millimeters till you find the sweet spot. Picking near the bridge will help these ring out more clearly as well. You do get a different, kind of harsher tone to it, but because we're rolling the volume in, it won't really be affected too much. So the last one, what we've got here is the 3rd fret on the A string. So you'll find that's probably dead. What you want to do is move slightly towards the body. Again, start off directly above the 3rd fret, hit it, just move your finger back and forth until you find the kind of sweet spot, as it were. What you might have noticed is that rather than just swell in, what I did was rolled in as usual, but then added a sort of tremolo effect by bouncing the volume between maybe 5.5 and 9 on my volume pot. So 2 bonus tricks here. You don't really need to always roll all the way up to generate a noticeable dip or swell in output. And secondly, you can get this DIY tremolo effect from the humble volume knob. So back on track, we've got this 5th fret harmonic that we play and then swell in. Maybe around 7 or 8 for me. And then what you do is reduce the volume so it more or less disappears. You don't want to go to 0, but you want to bounce it back up so it becomes nice and audible again for that manual tremolo. So for me, I'm swelling in to maybe about 7 or 8. And then for the tremolo, I'm probably going between maybe 3 and 7 or 3 and 6. Obviously, as it gets quieter, you can afford to roll the volume up a bit more. So to just demo the tremolo thing by itself. That's all I'm doing, is kind of bouncing it, and you can just use your ears and kind of feel for how much or how little you need to roll the pot. So after this, it's the same idea for the remaining notes. On this 4th fret harmonic, we play it, roll it in, and use the tremolo effect. And again, picking near the bridge will really help these ring out. Same for this 5th fret. And like, you can use your thumb for this, whatever is the easiest thing to do. And then finally the same for this one that's near the 3rd fret. I'm probably thinking about an E minor chord here, or perhaps a C major. The notes are G, F sharp, D, and E. So over an E minor it'd be the flat 3rd, 2nd, flat 7, root. I mean, this is a sort of phrase that would work well over, for example, a 6-4-5-6 chord progression. So in E minor we'd have E minor, C, D, E minor. I've not got enough hands to show this, but even if we just take the root note from each chord, for example. Yeah, I'd maybe want to go up to that A note just on the last time, just for a little bit of variation. So you might have picked up on these are a lot harder to demo at slower paces compared to conventional licks, because it's a lot more difficult to ride the volume, so thank you for bearing with me in that regard. But this lick, what it does is it leans really hard into the idea of the partial swell, and is really at this point quite possibly closer to pot control. So you have your volume low, maybe somewhere between 1.5 and 3 for me. I'm playing very softly and also near the neck for that kind of smoother tone. A bit harsher near here compared to here. So playing really softly. And then for this bend, I'm really digging in. I'm also rolling the volume pot in to really let that note soar. So I'm angling my pick and kind of trying to move over to the bridge pickup, because that's the one I'm on, that's where I'm going to get the highest output. Playing it, and when the bend kind of peaks, that's when I want to reach 10 on the volume pot. So just as I play it, rolling the pot up. So bending it a tone, when you reach the kind of pitch, the peak of the pitch is when you probably want to reach the peak of the volume as well. Obviously you can do this in different ways, this is just a kind of jumping off point for you. But you could try a different pickup as well. I feel that the bridge pickup is the best option here, but it's up to yourself. So hopefully you'll agree that in context this is much more impactful than playing every note evenly. So just for comparison back to back, if I played everything the same, compared with more dynamics. So as a bonus tip, if you want to keep your volume static, what you can do is roll in the tone pot on this bend to really let it wail. So let's keep our volume up. I'm just going to move now to like 8 or 9 just to be different. Let's go for it. Tone pot I'm going to put down to about 3 or 4, and if you've got a master tone you can just use that. So what I'm doing here, instead of rolling up the volume, I'm going to roll up the relevant tone pot. So just that bend. Overbent a bit there, sorry. And if I don't move the tone pot at all, you don't get that same kind of grabbing of the note. Again, digging in really helps on this to get that kind of richer harmonic content and that delayed pick attack as it is. A special little extra trick for the Lick Squad Elite there. Thanks for watching this far, you guys rock. But yeah, I mean, you could invert this as well, so you could bring down the bend as a false crescendo, a bit like Andy Timmons does in his song Gone when the backing band kind of kicks in. That was volume swells, 5 licks and other techniques that just work really well in conjunction with pot rolling. This has been Quick Guitar Tricks, that's the playlist there. For a look at more pot control, check out this video. But yeah, hit subscribe to stay up to date with the channel, leave me a comment, share it with your fellow musicians, and enable notifications by ringing that little bell on the side if you feel so inclined. Cheers guys.